The ink on the divorce papers had barely dried when Daniel Cross, a cold, work-obsessed CEO, swore he'd never look back. His empire was thriving, his heart empty but steady, until fate dragged him to a quiet cafe one rainy afternoon in Seattle. He froze There, by the window, sat Emily Hayes, the woman he once loved more than his own life, her laughter soft, familiar, and in her arms, a little girl with his eyes. His breath caught, the child's giggle echoed, a sound that pierced straight through the armor he'd spent years building. Every deal, every late night, every wall he'd built suddenly felt meaningless. Daniel didn't believe in second chances, but the way that little girl smiled, his smile made him wonder if life was giving him one anyway. Daniel Cross wasn't supposed to be there. He had a meeting across town, a merger worth billions, a schedule packed tighter than his chest felt at that moment. But the second he saw her, Emily, the world outside the cafe window went silent. The rain traced silver lines down the glass, and inside, she was laughing. It wasn't the loud, carefree laugh he remembered. It was softer, cautious, like a woman who'd learned how fragile happiness could be. The little girl reached for a napkin, smearing chocolate across her cheeks. Emily wiped it gently, her hand trembling slightly. Daniel's throat tightened. That girl, she had his eyes, his dimple, the same wayward curl that used to fall over his forehead. He stood frozen, watching from the corner of the street. He told himself to walk away. She moved on. You signed those papers. You made her hate you. But something stronger than pride, stronger than reason, pulled him across the street. The bell over the cafe door chimed softly. Emily's laughter faded. She turned. Their eyes met. Her face went pale, coffee cup trembling in her hand. Daniel, she whispered. It was the first time he'd heard his name on her lips in 3 years. Emily. He breathed, his voice rougher than he intended. He glanced at the child, then back at her. She's beautiful. Emily's jaw tensed. She reached across the table, instinctively pulling the little girl closer. You shouldn't be here. Daniel's chest ached. I didn't plan to be. He stopped. What could he even say? I was chasing another deal while you built a life without me. Emily stood, her composure cracking. You don't get to just walk back into my life. Daniel. The cafe fell silent. A few customers pretended not to stare, but the tension was thick enough to taste. He raised his hands slightly. I'm not here to fight. His eyes flicked to the child again. I need to know. Emily's breath caught. Know what? Her name, he said quietly. Please. She hesitated for a long, painful second. The little girl peeked at him curiously from behind Emily's skirt, clutching a small stuffed bunny. Leela, Emily finally whispered. Her name is Leela. The name hit him like a heartbeat. Leela Cross. He didn't say it out loud, but it echoed through him, louder than the rain outside. He knelt down, lowering himself to her level. Hi Leela, he said softly. I'm Daniel. The little girl smiled shyly, then giggled just like before. That same sound that had shattered him. Emily turned away, tears forming in her eyes. You can't do this. Daniel stood, his voice breaking. Do what? Care. Pretend I didn't just find out I might have a daughter. Her head snapped up. Might, she repeated bitterly. That's exactly why I never told you. Because you'd question it, analyze it, turn it into another business decision. He flinched, guilt slicing through him. Emily, I didn't know. No, Daniel, you didn't want to know. Her voice trembled now, raw and exhausted. When we divorced, you didn't even ask if I was okay. You signed the papers and flew to London that same night. Daniel's mind flashed back, boardrooms, champagne, empty congratulations. And beneath it all, the dull ache of something he never admitted, the hollow where she used to be. He took a step closer. I thought I was doing what you wanted. You said you were done. I was broken, she whispered. You never looked back to see if I meant it. Silence, just rain and breathing. Daniel exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Emily, please, just tell me the truth. Is she mine? Emily looked down at Leela, who was humming softly to herself, completely unaware of the storm surrounding her. Then, with a trembling sigh, she said the words that changed everything. Yes, she whispered. She's yours. Daniel's world tilted. The noise of the cafe disappeared. He stared at the little girl, the small, innocent heartbeat that carried pieces of him he never knew he'd left behind. He swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me? Emily's eyes filled with tears. Because you were too busy building towers. I couldn't let her grow up waiting for a father who only checked his calendar. Daniel stepped back, the weight of her words pressing on his chest. Every success, every deal suddenly felt meaningless. He nodded slowly. You're right, he said softly. That was me. I was too busy proving I could build everything except a life. Emily blinked, startled by his tone. For the first time, he didn't sound like Daniel, the CEO. He sounded like Daniel, the man she once loved. He looked at Lila again, his voice barely a whisper. Can I see her again? Emily hesitated, torn between fear and the truth in his eyes. I don't know, she said finally. You broke me once, Daniel. I can't let you break her. He nodded slowly, understanding. Then let me fix what I can, he murmured. Not as a CEO, not as the man who failed you, but as her father. Emily turned away, holding Lila close. The rain had stopped outside, but inside, the storm had only just begun, as Daniel stepped out into the cold air. He knew one thing for certain, he could lose everything else again, but not them, not this time. Daniel Cross couldn't remember the last time he'd been this nervous, not before billion-dollar mergers, not even when the press had called him the Ice King of Wall Street. But standing outside a modest two-story house on the edge of Seattle, clutching a small teddy bear in his hand, he felt like a man on trial. It had been 2 days since the cafe, 2 days of silence, of unanswered texts, of him replaying every word Emily had said. You broke me once, Daniel. I can't let you break her. He deserved that, every syllable, but he also knew this wasn't the end. Not if there was a chance to be in Lila's life even as a shadow, even from afar. He took a deep breath and rang the bell. A few moments later, Emily opened the door. She looked tired, hair in a loose bun, eyes cautious, but there was a softness in her expression he hadn't seen in years. Daniel, hi, he said, his voice low. I brought something for Lila. Emily's gaze flicked to the teddy bear. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said quickly. I'm not here to force anything. I just want to try? She hesitated, then stepped aside. She's in the living room. Daniel stepped inside. The house smelled like coffee and baby shampoo. The walls were covered in watercolor paintings, tiny handprints, and messy rainbows. His throat tightened. He'd missed everything. Lila was sitting on the floor, surrounded by building blocks. She looked up when he entered, her bright eyes wide. Hi again, he said softly, kneeling beside her. She studied him carefully, then smiled. You came back. Something inside him cracked. Yeah, he whispered. I came back. She handed him a block. Help me build a castle. He smiled for the first time in years, a real one. I'd love to. For the next few minutes, Daniel forgot who he was. He wasn't the CEO with 20 companies. He wasn't the man who'd built an empire from glass and ambition. He was just a father, awkwardly stacking blocks while his daughter laughed every time their castle fell. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed but not coldly, watching them. When Lila ran to grab another toy, Emily finally spoke. She doesn't understand any of this yet. She just thinks you're someone nice who likes her drawings. Daniel nodded. That's okay. She doesn't have to understand yet. I just want to be around. Emily sighed, sitting down across from him. You're serious about this? More than anything I've ever been serious about, he said quietly. You were right, Emily. I was too busy chasing things that didn't matter. But that cafe, seeing Hurt woke me up. For the first time in years, I felt something real. Emily looked down, tracing her finger over a block. You say that now, but I've heard your promises before. You disappear when things get hard. He swallowed hard. You're right, I used to. He paused. But I'm not that man anymore. She raised an eyebrow. No, you still wear the same $1,000 watch. He laughed softly. Habit. Then, his tone shifted. Emily, I've spent my whole life measuring success in profits. But that little girl, she's the only investment I'll ever care about making right. Emily blinked, caught off guard. You've gotten better at speeches. He smiled faintly. You taught me how to mean them. For a moment, silence settled, comfortable, fragile. Then Lila came running back with a crayon drawing. Mommy, look, it's us. Emily smiled. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Lila pointed at the paper. That's you, Mommy. That's me. And that's... She turned to Daniel, hesitating. That's my... Daniel's heart thudded. Emily's eyes darted to him, uncertain. He knelt again. That's your friend. For now, he said softly. But I'd like to be someone special to you someday, if that's okay. Lila nodded solemnly, then grinned. You can be Mr. Castle Builder. He laughed, eyes stinging. Deal. After Lila went to bed, Daniel lingered at the doorway. Thank you for letting me see her, he said. Emily folded her arms, leaning against the wall. I'm not saying this means anything changes. I know, he said, but maybe it can. Someday. Her gaze softened slightly. She liked you. That's more than I deserve. Emily smiled faintly. You're right about that. He chuckled under his breath, then grew serious. Emily, I don't expect forgiveness. I just need time. Let me earn a place in her life and maybe, if I'm lucky, a little space in yours again. She studied him for a long time, then quietly said, We'll see. He nodded. That's all I'm asking. When he left that night, the city lights blurred through the rain again, but this time, they didn't look so empty. For the first time in years, Daniel Cross wasn't chasing numbers. He was chasing laughter, teeny, bright, 4-year-old laughter that sounded a lot like hope. Weeks passed. The crisp Seattle mornings became softer, warmer, as if the city itself had started to forgive him. Every Thursday afternoon, Daniel drove across town not in his sleek black limousine, but in a quiet sedan to see Lila. Sometimes, he brought puzzles. Sometimes, just snacks and crayons. But always, he brought time. The first few visits were awkward. Lila would look at him curiously, unsure where he fit. Emily hovered nearby, protective but patient. Daniel never pushed. He listened, laughed when Lila laughed, and stayed when she wanted to play family with her dolls. The man who once signed contracts without reading them now sat for hours coloring pink castles and crooked hearts. One afternoon, Leela tugged on his sleeve. You work a lot, right? She asked. He blinked. I used to. Why? She asked, tilting her head. Daniel smiled faintly. Because I thought that's what made me important. She frowned. That's silly. Mommy says important people make others happy. Her words hit him harder than any boardroom defeat ever had. She's right, he whispered. Emily, who'd been listening from the kitchen, froze at the doorway. The man she saw wasn't the one she'd left years ago. That man had hidden behind arrogance and ambition. This Daniel was quieter, present, human. Later that evening, when Lila fell asleep on the couch, Daniel helped Emily carry her to bed. As they stood over her tiny sleeping form, Daniel whispered, She's perfect. Emily nodded, voice soft. She's everything. He looked at her, eyes full of regret. You did all this alone. I had to, she said simply. You weren't there. I know, he murmured, and I'll never forgive myself for it. Emily studied him for a long moment. There was no coldness in her gaze this time, just exhaustion and a quiet ache. Daniel, I don't hate you anymore. I just stopped expecting anything. He swallowed hard. Then maybe I can surprise you. She almost smiled. You always were good at that. A week later, Emily arrived home to find Daniel on her porch, holding a cardboard box. What's this? She asked, brow raised. He grinned sheepishly. A swing set. Her eyes widened. You didn't. I did. Don't worry. I actually read the manual this time. Emily laughed a real when and something inside him lit up. For hours, they worked side by side in the backyard. Daniel hammered. Emily held the frame steady. Every once in a while, their hands brushed, and neither said a word. When they finished, Leela came running out, squealing in delight. It's for me. Daniel knelt down. All yours, princess. She threw her arms around his neck, and for a moment, time stood still. Emily turned away quickly, wiping her eyes. That night, after Lila fell asleep, Emily brought out 2 mugs of tea. They sat on the porch in silence, watching the stars blink through the misty clouds. Do you remember when we used to talk about having a family? She asked softly. He nodded. Yeah. I remember saying I'd give her the world. You did, Emily said quietly. Just not in the way I expected. Daniel's jaw tightened. I built skyscrapers, but I never built a home. You did that without me. She sighed. You were chasing dreams. He looked at her. No. I was running from loneliness. Emily turned to him, her eyes glistening. Daniel. He shook his head. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know, I'm not going anywhere this time. Even if all I can be is the guy who fixes her swing set. She smiled faintly, tears threatening. You really have changed. He chuckled. Maybe love was the one thing I couldn't buy. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night. For the first time since their divorce, Emily didn't feel angry. She felt calm, maybe even hopeful. When Daniel finally stood to leave, she whispered, You can come by tomorrow. She wants to show you how high she can swing. He froze, a small smile tugging at his lips. I'd like that. As he walked to his car, Emily watched him go. Somewhere deep inside, something began to stir, a warmth she thought she'd buried forever. Days turned to weeks. Leela started calling him Danny. Emily started leaving him texts instead of silence. And Daniel started smiling again. He left the office earlier, learned to cook pancakes terribly, and once even skipped a shareholders' dinner just to watch Leela's kindergarten play. When she forgot her lines on stage, she looked toward the crowd. He stood, smiling proudly, and whispered, "You got this?" She beamed. The room melted away. Afterward, Emily hugged him for the first time in years. "She adores you," she whispered. He smiled through tears. "Then I've already won." But as every story knows, redemption doesn't come without a test. That night, Daniel received a call from his board of directors. A critical deal required him to fly to London immediately. Billions were on the line. He stared at his phone, torn. The old Daniel wouldn't have hesitated, but the man he was now thought about a tiny swing set, a pink castle, and a little girl's laughter. He looked toward the photo Emily had sent earlier, Leela with her bunny, grinning at the camera, and whispered, "Not this time." He sent a single text, "Family first." Then, for the first time in his life, he put his phone face down and let it ring. The morning started like any other. Lila was at the park with Emily, squealing as Daniel pushed her on the swing. The air smelled like rain and roses. For once, the world felt right. Emily looked at him, smiling softly. "She's happy," she said. He nodded, breathless. "Yeah, I think I am too." But peace, like love, always came with a test. As they packed up, Daniel's phone buzzed relentlessly. At first, he ignored it. Then the name flashing on the screen froze him. Jonathan Klein, the company's chairman. He answered reluctantly. "Daniel, where the hell are you? The London deal's collapsing. They're threatening to pull out unless you're on the next flight." Daniel glanced at Emily and Lila. Lila was holding up a flower crown, laughing. Emily's eyes met his, searching, worried. "Then let them pull out," Daniel said finally. There was silence on the line. "You can't be serious." "I am," Daniel said quietly. "I've spent half my life chasing signatures. I'm done missing the moments that actually matter." He hung up. Emily blinked. "Daniel, what did you just do?" He smiled faintly. "Something I should have done years ago, choose you." Her breath hitched. "You'd walk away from everything." "I already did," he said softly, eyes glistening. "The day I walked away from you." Emily's lips parted, but no words came. The man standing before her wasn't the CEO she divorced. He wasn't the one obsessed with power or control. He was just Daniel, the man who built a swing set and learned to love again. That evening, as the rain began to fall, Emily invited him in for dinner. Lila had drawn something new, a stick figure family, hand in hand. "This one's for you," she said proudly, pointing at the tallest figure. Daniel's throat tightened. "I look happy." "You are," Lila said simply. "Because you're home." Emily turned away, tears slipping silently down her cheek. Later, after Leela was tucked into bed, Daniel lingered in the doorway. "She called me Dad tonight," he whispered. Emily smiled, her eyes still wet. "I heard." Daniel hesitated. "You don't know what that means to me." She stepped closer. "I think I do." For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain against the window sounded like applause from a forgiving sky. "Emily," he said finally, voice shaking, "I can't undo what I did, but I can spend every day proving I've changed." She met his gaze. "You already are." Their hands brushed, then held. "I never stopped loving you," he confessed. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I just stopped believing you'd come back." Daniel smiled through the ache. "Then let me earn that belief again." Emily nodded slowly, one day at a time. He exhaled in relief, pulling her into a quiet, trembling embrace. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man holding on to the past. He felt like someone finally standing where he belonged. Months later, Daniel sold his company, not in defeat, but in freedom. He started a small foundation for single parents, helping those who fought the same battles Emily once did. His office was now a cozy study overlooking a garden. His meetings were breakfast pancakes and Leela's school projects. He'd traded boardrooms for bedtime stories, contracts for crayon drawings, and never looked back. On a sunny spring afternoon, Lila burst through the door, waving a paper. "Daddy, I drew your castle." Daniel laughed, sweeping her into his arms. "Our castle, princess. Remember? We built it together." Emily appeared in the doorway, smiling at the sight of them. "Dinner's ready." He kissed Lila's forehead, then turned to Emily with a grin. "You know, I think I like this life better." She chuckled. What happened to the man who thought love was a distraction? He wrapped an arm around her waist. He finally realized love was the whole point. Outside, the sky turned gold as laughter filled the home he'd once only dreamed of. And in that golden quiet, Daniel Cross, former billionaire, former husband, Now father knew that for the first time in his life, he hadn't lost anything. He'd found everything. He was a man who built an empire but lost the only thing that mattered: love. Years after his divorce, Daniel Cross thought his heart had turned to stone, until he saw Emily again, holding a baby with his smile. This is not just a love story, it's a story of regret, redemption, and the moment a powerful man finally learns what home truly means. In a world where money can buy everything except time, Daniel learns that family is the one investment that never loses value. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and comment below. Would you forgive someone who left you behind if they came back changed?